We live in a hyperactive shorts and TikTok world with consumers having virtually non-existent attention spans, but back in 2018, the punctilious and evocative narrative of Red Dead Redemption 2 demonstrates that the average consumer still possesses the patience and the willingness to absorb longer forms of media. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a tale that moved me. It's a tale that cements Arthur Morgan's place as an iconic figure in Wild West folklore, and a tale that highlights as a society the majority of us still can persevere with a 40 to 50 hour long story that treks from one end of the emotional spectrum to the other without mindless violence being the only selling point to the plotline that can hold the consumer's attention.
Oh, somebody shoot some fucker! I took a half day off work for this!
Make no mistake though, Red Dead Redemption 2 has a copious amount of violence, a lot of which is freely given to the player to experiment with outside of the plotline, and other instances that are tightly tied to the narrative. The writers at Rockstar never hung their cowboy hats on the idea that violence will be an essential element to the story, with some genius intricacies found within certain character relationships, the overall pacing of the story, and a historical respect paid towards the late 1800s and the decline of the Wild West on the whole. The means to survive and the hardship that everyone faces is portrayed impeccably as we follow the story of Arthur Morgan, who's a valued member of the infamous Van der Linde gang. The plotline gets going as the gang botches their attempted heist of a ferry and are forced into giving up their prize money, stashing it in the town of Blackwater before eventually heading south to avoid the law while robbing and fighting their way to a lucrative freedom. Every member of the gang is afforded screen time at some point or another on their journey, with so many contrasting and harmonious personalities making for some of the most memorable quests in gaming, and even the smaller, less consequential interactions are all impactful in their own way. The dedication and attention to detail paid towards the narrative spills over into so many other aspects of Red Dead 2. I mean, just look at these visuals. We're talking about a 5-year-old game that still looks substantially better than the majority of AAA open world games today. There's very few games that will get me excited to just boot up with zero intentions, like I must finish this quest or I must get that achievement. I boot up Red Dead 2 and just let the game take me where it takes me, and the jaw-dropping visuals are a huge reason for that. The draw distance boasting their almost photorealistic landscapes, the finer details within the asset textures, the high fidelity surfaces from character models, the terrain, the tessellation, it all looks so incredible that I still find myself just wading through the snow to cathartically appreciate the trail that Arthur leaves behind him, or switching to first person to get an even closer look and admire the impressive level of detail showcased in that massive pile of shit I've just stepped in.
Did you just step in that on purpose?
Oh, no, I didn't really see it.
You pointed it out to me!
It's not just the visuals that'll engulf your mind's eye when playing Red Dead 2 though, and again, sticking with the topic of attention to detail, from a gameplay perspective there are so many small processes that can often be found in other games but have little to no impact on your gameplay experience as you progress through the game. In Red Dead 2, these small processes extend way beyond a simple attempt to immerse the player by giving them something to interact with. Processes like feeding and caring for my horse, keeping the horse clean, well fed and groomed, will maintain the horse's health and stamina cores, and by doing so will make Arthur's life navigating the Wild West wilderness that much simpler. You, the player, and Arthur will both develop a bond with your horse. You, in the sense that you'll likely have travelled miles and miles with your horse, caring for it as much as it cares for Arthur when bolting away from the steel barrel of the law. You'll feel the responsibility to hitch your horse to a post so it doesn't wander off to get pancaked by a nearby train. Arthur also develops a bond with his horse that affects the gameplay side of things, simply caring for it or giving it words of encouragement as you both soar through nature together will increase Arthur's bond level, unlocking new moves for the horse to bust out, making you and your horse the envy of the West.
You ready to race? Huh?
Mechanically as well, it's just a joy to control the horses. It feels grounded and pragmatic without losing infusing the enjoyment but still forcing the player to respect the laws of physics, unlike the Assassin's Creed or the Witcher 3 horse mechanics for example, and considering the amount of time spent on horseback, it's an essential mechanic that Rockstar have absolutely nailed. These small processes don't just stop with your horse though. Maintaining your gun, it's vital if you want each gun to operate at its maximum potential. Over time the gun will gather dirt, it'll need cleaning and the barrel will need oiling, but if you let your weapons deteriorate, there'll be a noticeable decline in their accuracy. Physically seeing Arthur act the action out grounds the player in that scenario, and viewers who watch my videos already will know that I love these type of methodical actions in games. Rockstar doubled down in every way possible in that regard, engrossing the player in actions that are typically the push of a button in some form of menu or some weird arm swiping the air animation in most other games. You'll see Arthur pulling out a cleaning rod to oil his gun before wiping it clean. You'll see Arthur pierce his gamey meat, roasting it on a fire before either eating it or stashing it away in his bag. You'll see Arthur lift the body of someone who dared to cross him before he pats him down and checks his pockets for valuables. And you'll see Arthur open every cupboard door or chest of drawers and reach out to grab whatever loot is hidden within. Almost every action in Red Dead 2 has its own dedicated animation. It's like I mentioned at the start with people's attention spans and the industry feeding this attitude of wanting everything now. Give it to me immediately. It's just not true, and it doesn't need to be the case. If you produce top tier quality content, people will enjoy it regardless of it being a slightly longer and meticulous process. I feel more engrossed in doing so, and the experience is all the better because of that. The cover-based shooting mechanics feel pretty good, but I certainly wouldn't praise them as much as the other aspects to Red Dead Redemption 2. They're the same as GTA 5's essentially, and while they're still pretty solid, I'd definitely expect an upgrade on how they feel in GTA 6 or Red Dead 3. I really like the slow motion Deadeye system, which is one of the 3 cores alongside your health and stamina, all being maintained with the various consumables that you can find. I feel like the Deadeye system masks the gunplay's mediocrity on the whole though in truth, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because it does a really good job of it, especially as Arthur's abilities within the Deadeye system increase over time till eventually you're lining up and firing off 6 or 7 headshots in the blink of an eye. Without Deadeye though, we're talking about the foundations of the gunplay mechanics, and at times they can feel a little loose, even more so without the use of auto aim, which is a pretty obvious statement, but the ragdoll effects and the graphic visuals fed back to the player can be jaw-droppingly brutal and certainly make up for any simplicity that might be felt during a gunfight. I definitely recommend a first-person playthrough for anyone who's not already done that, because although mechanically it's the same, there is that different feel to each encounter, with the POV and the FOV playing a huge role in increasing the intensity of each showdown. The open world is the greatest open world in gaming as far as I'm concerned, and that's not because of the stunning visuals or the physical world design itself, or even the variation of biomes, from bustling street life in Saint Denis, heading just north into the boggy and crocodile-filled bayou marshlands, heading even further up north into the treacherous snowy lands around Mount Hagen, or heading far west in the late game to face the harsh desert lands of New Austin. As good as all those aspects to the world are, it's the random encounters that fuel this open world, creating so much spontaneity for the player. And I'm not talking about the side content, the question mark missions, and the very easily missed detective style missions, or even the treasure hunting, all of which are an incredibly rewarding find. It's the smaller random encounters with no two ever being the same. When that little white dot flashes on my minimap, my heart races with anticipation, wondering if it'll be some friendly or potential beneficial encounter, or maybe some regrettable, life-threatening encounter instead. Other games try to emulate this, but more often than not end up being perceived as distractions once you've completed a full cycle of encounters and realise they end up just being rinse and repeat after a while. The sheer number of them in Red Dead 2 and the alluring unpredictability of them is the strongest catalyst to this open world success. Now, there is a fast travel system, but again, Rockstar was so confident in the impeccable incredible world that they created, they not only limited the fast travel to a map that's pinned to the back of your car in your gang's camp, or going through a pragmatic process like I mentioned earlier where you can use a horse carriage or a train to fast travel, but you have to physically get to a station and buy yourself a ticket to do so. This world would be completely ruined if some random spawning points were littered all over the map, and it's rare for a world of this size to have such limited fast travel and still make every journey feel like a mini adventure that's more than worth your time. I still can't get over the amount of thought that's been clearly poured into the other totally optional gameplay systems, but regardless of their lack of necessity to progressing through the main quests, they feel like a cornerstone to this whole world, and I couldn't help but spend hours learning how to hunt each animal, learning their preferred locations, what ammunition types are needed to extract the perfect pelts to craft different clothing items or decorating your camp, finding the various fishing spots, and you're not only absorbing an awe-inspiring environment in the process, you're learning the in-depth fishing mechanics that requires patience and precision to catch the rarest of fish. I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2 taught me how to play dominoes, which ended up with me buying a real deck of dominoes so I can play with my son. There's an argument to suggest that the abundance of optional side content is actually the best content in Red Dead 2. It's incredible. Now, I think the biggest disappointment from Red Dead 2 is nothing to do with the game itself, but more towards how neglected Red Dead Redemption 2 became on the whole. No new story-based DLC, and Red Dead Online had and still has immense potential for an online sandbox. I have so much fun just role-playing with my mate Les as two horrible and outrageously despicable men of the West, the infamous Willie McDangles and the dastardly Butch Firecrotch.
Ride it, Butch. Watch out, fuck. Oh, this is sharp as shit. You got a coat on, I ain't got shit on my skin getting torn to bits.
Well, at least you got a free nipple piercing there, Willie. Every cloud.
Sadly, the online quests and dedication to evolving this universe just pales in comparison to GTA 5's online world. That could be down to the number of active players not quite hitting the heights Rockstar were hoping for, or GTA 5 Online just takes up so much time and resources that Red Dead Online had to be ignored. For whatever reason, it's pretty devastating. It's also pretty devastating that console players are still limited to 30 FPS without the use of some sneaky emulation on Xbox consoles, and PC players that bought on day one will remember it getting off to a more than rocky start. Thankfully, today PC players have a ton of graphical options to tinker with, and whether you're choosing to play in the DX12 or Vulkan API, you'll be hard pushed not to find a combination of settings that don't get Red Dead Redemption 2 running smoothly at your resolution. Personally, I think Red Dead Redemption 2 is the greatest game ever made, and it sits in first place pretty comfortably in that regard, but I would love to hear where you guys rank it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.